In this episode, we discuss invisible labor. We talk about what it is, how it affects different areas of your life, and why it can be difficult to let go of.
Let's talk about what intuition really is.
Let's look at all the places intuition and ego show up in your life.
Let's share honestly.
Let's do the research.
I'm Jamie Hayhurst.
I'm Heather Wood.
This is the Intuitive Girls Guide.
Hey, Jay.
Hey.
We're going to talk about invisible labor today.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about this because I find myself explaining it to people a lot and having trouble explaining it to people. Like, I know solidly what it is. I know that you know solidly what it is, but it's sort of, I feel like, how can I explain this? So what oftentimes happens with Jamie and I when people are asking us questions a lot or just in life we're explaining things to people, we're like, let's make an episode about this.
Yeah.
So that we can tell people,
yes,
go listen to this episode where we explain this concept.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's why we're here.
I also think I feel like I need to just say it right now so I can stop thinking about it.
Okay. I'm nervous.
Because my ADHD will not allow it. I made that weird face when you first said it because I really want to sing that song. That's that
you make me do too much.
Yeah, I was like, how do I bring this up without actually having to sing it? But like that song that's viral on TikTok and Instagram is about doing. You make me do.
Yeah.
Too much labor.
I mean, I could possibly try to figure out how to play it during the episode. But yes, if that becomes stuck in your head,
it's already there.
You're welcome. Yeah. We have it in our heads too. It's going to be there. If you've never heard it,
can move on.
You should. It's like Paris Paloma or something.
Something, yeah.
It's incredible.
It is. It's wonderful.
It's a great song. Yeah.
Okay, now I can move on.
You can move on. I'm sure it'll come up.
I've addressed it.
It'll come up again, probably. Okay. So we know that I love a definition.
You do.
This is a hard thing to define, Jamie.
Yes.
And it's not, it hasn't been in pop culture enough lately for us to have a bunch of different people defining it. It's not in like psychological books. So this was tough.
It's also sort of abstract enough. You'll know it when we get there, but it's abstract enough that people still can argue with it.
Yeah. And it's,
you know what I mean?
100%. And it's also different in situationally.
Right.
So it's difficult, but this is one I got. This is actually a Wikipedia definition, which is really not my favorite source to grab stuff from, but it was the best I could do.
Okay.
I figured I'd say it and we can kind of talk about it. So invisible labor is a philosophical, sociological, and economic concept applying to work that is unseen, unvalued, or undervalued, and often discounted as not important, despite its essential role in supporting the functioning of workplaces, families, teams, and organizations.
Yes. That's a good definition.
I think so too. It's a little bit of like a catch-all. It's one of those things that you define and then people are like, but what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
But it really means anything that you're doing that is not being valued or seen by the people around you.
Yeah. And certainly not paid.
Certainly not paid.
Yeah.
Okay. In our society, and not just in American society, I believe in most societies this will be true around the world. Please feel free to argue if you live somewhere that it's not true. The invisible labor, the majority of that is done by women.
100%. I mean, if you heard that definition and didn't think of women, then welcome. You have a great life.
Yes.
Enjoy it.
No, there's obviously exceptions to this, and we will talk about those exceptions. So I'm not trying to make this just a woman's issue, but it really is a woman's issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In a patriarchal society, that's an issue.
I mean, and I think I would say that that would also fall to any marginalized community. There's invisible labor in any marginalized community.
100%. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about just the expectation element, especially with marginalized communities, of being the ones to sort of fix, call out, explain, adjust, and how that invisible labor is even less spoken about. So I think it's important to show that it's certainly not just a white woman in a heterosexual marriage's problem.
Correct.
It's far beyond
Agreed.
that. I mean, that
Right.
is a place where it's a big problem.
Correct.
But
But I also
it's
see
beyond.
those women doing that to other people
Yep.
and not realizing it.
100%. We're even going to talk about it in friendships. We're going to talk about it in your family systems, not just romantic relationships. Like, it shows up in a lot of places.
Yep.
And it's not one of those things where I want you to listen to this episode and then like go confront everyone you know and be like, how dare you have given me all this invisible
Send them
labor.
a bill.
But instead have it be something that you can open up for communication. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm going to talk about it when we get there, but I tend to be the organizer of all the things in every single
Yes.
dynamic that I'm in.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That has to do with my personality type.
True.
But what's important about that is checking in with yourself and going like, okay, I'm doing a lot of this invisible labor. It's fine till it's not. And when it's not, what do you do?
Exactly.
How do you communicate that without like flipping out or having an issue or not taking the responsibility kind of like, well, I've also created this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm
play
saying?
into it also.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about all of that because I think it's sneaky, invisible labor, especially if you've grown up in a culture that's taught you as a woman that you should be expected to be doing all this invisible labor for no credit. It's the thing that drives us crazy about like Mother's Day cards or women's funerals. How selfless she was. You're basically being like, she did like a ton of invisible labor all the time and she never complained or...
And she also didn't know she had a choice to not do it.
Exactly.
Like, that's how we're socialized.
Yeah, and we're valued. We're taught that we're valued that way. So, this term was coined by a sociologist and writer named Arlene Kaplan Daniels.
Okay.
And do you want to just take a guess when this term was coined?
The 90s.
1987.
Nice.
I was surprised because I really hadn't heard... I mean, I've heard of the concept, but I hadn't heard of the term until probably the last few years being used.
Same.
But it makes sense to me that like late 80s, early 90s, you'd be seeing like a movement of this.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that makes sense. All right. Let's talk about let's start with the romantic relationships. But let me just also say like invisible labor tends to be categorized as like just mental labor. But there is emotional labor and there is like a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into a lot of things that invisible labor, like that's describing that as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we'll get there. So again, people are like, yes, I have to keep all the schedules in my head. That's invisible labor. Absolutely. But also being the one that's managing the emotional well-being of everybody in the room. Being the person that, this is an example we're going to use later, but like whenever there's a event at somebody's house, even if it's just a dinner party, I only ever see women going, what can I bring?
Oh yeah.
That is,
or getting like a hostess gift or something.
Yes. That is invisible labor as well. Okay. So we're going to get into all that, but let's start with romantic relationships. So I'm going to start off, we're going to get to same-sex relationships in a minute because there's a dynamic there that we're going to talk about. Okay. But I'm going to start off talking mainly about heterosexual relationships.
Heteronormative,
Yes, heteronormative. Because we're going to talk about same-sex relationships. There's a little bit of data. Unfortunately, this is not something that's really studied.
People aren't putting tons of money into it.
No. So most of the data we have are with a man and a woman.
Right.
It doesn't have to be married, but I would say a committed relationship that we're getting this data from when we're talking about romantic relationships.
Okay.
All right. So in romantic relationships, what tends to be labeled as invisible labor is anything that is considered domestic work.
Okay.
So anything, when I say domestic, like for me, I would think of like cooking, planning the meals, cleaning the house, doing the laundry, right? Like those types of things.
Right.
Domestic labor tends to be considered invisible labor.
Correct.
Same as raising or caring for the children and all of that.
Right.
Okay. So that label is what we're talking about when we say domestic labor. Now, still in 2024 at the time of this recording.
Correct.
Domestic labor is still considered like woman's work.
For the majority, yes, it is. For the majority of people in this country, yes.
Yeah, I still hear people call it that. I still see even women that I would consider like feminists and like paying
Mhm.
attention to the world and all of
Mhm.
that, making comments about it as if it's just
For
the job
women.
of women.
Yeah. I do see it shifting in some groups of people that I know.
Mhm.
But I do still see it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you and I are both lucky in that we're not married to people who see domestic labor as women's work.
Oh, no, thank God.
Neither of us are. And
Yeah, no.
both of us
You don't
share
want me
those
cooking.
roles.
Yeah.
Both of us share those roles with our husbands.
Yes.
And we're not the only ones. There's plenty of people who do that.
Right.
As a whole, if you start talking about domestic labor,
Right.
people are picturing things that a woman would do in a relationship.
And this is still the programming that you're receiving from culture, from media. You're still receiving that, even like you said, in this year, people are still talking about it like it's
Yeah.
like it's women's work.
It's still on TV shows,
Yep.
like only the woman putting
Right.
the pretend laundry away or cooking the meal. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
right,
It's silly. We just haven't caught up.
No, not
So
yet.
a lot of that then becomes invisible labor if you're not, first of all, you're not paid for it.
No.
Second of all, it's invisible if it's not appreciated and valued and accounted for, right? So I think it's important to say, like, if you're in a relationship and you're like, yeah, I do a lot of this invisible labor,
Right.
it's not just like, okay, you're screwed.
No.
You can go have a conversation
Right.
so the other person learns to make you feel valued in those ways and really sees what you're doing, and then it's not invisible labor anymore. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right, because your partner might also probably has been socialized in the same ways, and so they may not even realize that they're doing that to you, or they might not realize the actual labor that's going into it. They just think it's how things work, that's how things go. But then when you have that conversation,
Yep.
you might be educating them.
110,000%.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy, and this sounds like kind of an excuse for men, which is not something I do, so bear with me. It's not easy to suddenly shift and change this mindset.
No.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
and so I'm not saying that you should like, give the man like 5 years to adjust.
Well,
I'm just saying, like, if you can go in with a conversation instead of like coming in hot mad, you're gonna just have like an easier time at it, is my point.
Right. And the problem is that, and again, not to defend men, but like,
what is this episode where we're both doing this?
But like, if you're being honest about it, like the programming for women is just as, the programming for men is just as severe. So like, it might not be as simple as you just having a conversation with a man about like, hey, this is the work I'm doing. You don't seem to realize like the time and the effort that's going into that. They might have programming in themselves about like, well, if I start cooking and cleaning, maybe that means I'm less of a man. Maybe that means like, so you're not just talking about like a division of labor or like making schedules. You're talking about asking someone to rewrite these ideas they have about like masculinity and femininity and like a woman's role and man's role and all this heteronormative, all this stuff. Like, so should those conversations happen? Yes.
100%.
But like, should we be realistic about how that conversation is going to look and how long it might take to get it moving?
Yes.
Yeah, we should.
I mean, I even just look at the way my grandparents were raised as far as like gender roles and the dramatic shift to my parents being raised and then the dramatic shift to me and then the dramatic shift to my children. And it's so huge.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think about how my children don't, or the first I know in a line that don't look at any domestic roles as male or female.
Yes.
Beyond what society's taught them. Just in their home. You know, their father is cooking dinner, picking them up from school, cleaning the house as often as their mother is. You know what I mean? Like that isn't shown.
No.
But like just one generation before is so drastically different and it keeps going. So you have to kind of account for that.
Yeah, and that happened over 4 generations.
Exactly.
And so like you should you demand respect? And validation in your relationship? Yes.
Yes.
But is it realistic to expect 4 generations of change to happen in one conversation?
Right.
No. And should they be assholes about it and be mean to you? no, they shouldn't.
Right.
And if they push back and they don't want to work with you and they don't want to cooperate, red flag.
Yeah, that's probably already happening in a relationship.
But if it's like,
yes.
but if it's a conversation, it's a little bit bumpy, it's a little bit rocky. That's okay, as long as the person's on board.
100%. As long as the person's willing to be open to
Right.
it, then you have a chance here.
Right.
But I also think what's important is to recognize it in yourself that you're doing all of this invisible labor. Because there are so many women that I speak to who are like, I don't understand why I'm so tired, or like I don't understand why I have all these autoimmune things all of a sudden, or I can't eat gluten either, and I'm just going like,
your body's done.
Yeah.
It's
there's not
something's wrong.
There's all this invisible labor that you're not even acknowledging that you're doing, and you're exhausted because of it.
Yeah. And talk about like that programming is that like I can speak personally that like when I started to work on this stuff, I had a really hard time, even though I really wanted to let go of some of these jobs, I had a really hard time actually letting go of them because my validation and like my sense of self was tied to those things.
100%. And we're going to talk about that. I have in my research found a truth in this that has to do with how women see their worth, that I kept trying to be like, that can't be right. That can't be right. And it's right.
Right.
And we're going to get to it. I want to hint at it. But it's so much more complicated than just going, oh, now I see it, so let me shift it.
So now these are your jobs and I'm letting go of it. Right.
No.
No.
The other thing that I think is important to talk about in any relationship, work, romantic relationships, any of them, is you can't go in expecting 50-50 at everything.
Right.
Like that's never going to work. And it's like, imagine if in your marriage you expected every single task was done half by each partner.
Right.
Like that doesn't make sense. At work, not everyone's going to put in, like, so you can't go in with that expectation is my point. You have to sort of understand, like, I do these things and I just need to make sure that they're valued. I need to make sure that I'm compensated. It doesn't have to be financially. It might just be in recognition or whatever.
And it has to feel fair.
It has to feel fair, but it doesn't have to be everybody does half of everything.
Correct.
You have different personalities, you have different skills, you have different talents. So getting stuck there. You have
different neurodiversities.
Yes. And I see people getting stuck there with this. That might sound obvious, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm personally always in my marriage, which is, I think I'm very lucky in that my husband does a lot, like where it's pretty even.
Yeah.
I'm always going to do more of the planning.
Yes.
Because I am a very good planner and he is not a good planner. So I'm not going to then carry this aggravation and anger and frustration that he's not doing 50% of the planning.
Right.
No. But every once in a while, am I going to be like, credit for all this planning?
Yes.
Or I'm tired, or you need to wrap all the Christmas presents because I just planned it, made sure there was even amounts, planned the meal. Someone's got to do this. I got to tap out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like people get lost in the weeds of that a little.
No, I hear you.
Don't be like keeping a score. Be checking in with how you feel.
Correct.
Intuitive stuff like that.
Yes. That's the difference between intuition and ego.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So we see a lot more fathers stepping up and doing more of the invisible labor. They tend to be bringing kids to school more, cooking dinner, all of those kinds of things. You start to see that maybe they're like in charge of childcare. Okay. But where we see a lack still, where men for some reason have not caught up, is in appointments, knowing teachers' names, pediatricians, even birthdays.
Yep.
So it's important to look and go like, what invisible labor might need to be adjusted.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
This is personal. I don't think it's fair for only one parent to know who your kid's pediatrician is.
I don't think that's safe, actually.
No, I don't care if it's like it's saved in your husband's phone and he has to look at it. I mean, he should know. That's crazy. But like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, I do.
Do you know how many times I see or just somewhere and the dad is like, oh yeah, who's the pediatrician or who's the
Really?
teacher or what bus is my kid on? Like, this is wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that
Yes.
that invisible labor
Mm-hmm.
is also a like very big responsibility, and it's also someone
Yes.
constantly asking you, who do we go for the what doctor is it?
Those are all things that your kid relies on for safety.
Yeah.
Like how they physically get to and from school.
Yeah.
Who's taking care of them when they're sick, or if there's an accident or an emergency. Like,
what if something
why
happens
is
to
it-
you and like you can't say what these things are?
right? Like, why? That's bizarre, actually.
So there's all these studies, and there's actually like a really interesting article in Vogue that you can look up about invisible labor and like
Mhm.
the things that aren't catching up.
Yeah.
And so this was one of the
One of
things
them.
talked about. And another thing that you see, I don't know if you've seen this on TikTok. I think it depends on your algorithm, but there'll be like this jokey thing where a guy doing an interview on the street will go up to a man who's with his kids and be like, "When are your kids' birthdays?"
Oh,
and they
I
don't
have seen
know
that.
what
It's
color are your kids'
embarrassing.
eyes, and they don't know. Like,
By the way, that would offend me.
yes, what?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
I mean, we grew up in the 80s and 90s, and
Mhm.
I can say, I mean, you had a single dad,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit different. But
Yes.
like, my dad knew all those things.
Yes. Yeah. I know, but I don't think a lot of dads back then did.
I know, but like, it's
I know.
wild.
I know.
It's not the woman's job to be the person that like you become the mom when they're like, oh,
Yeah.
where do they go for this? What do they do for this? What time do they get out of school? What time do they have to be there? Like,
Right.
you're constantly answering those questions.
Right.
That's exhausting.
Yes.
All right.
Mm.
Weird
Yep.
that there's that whole category that isn't
Yeah.
catching up.
Interesting.
I think so.
Mhm.
It still feels like women are the secretaries in a way.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then I just want to make a note about same-sex relationships.
Mhm.
So the invisible labor tends to fall to the person in a same-sex relationship that does the majority of the domestic work.
Correct.
So
Yes.
it's still happening. It's just not automatically assigned.
Yes.
Okay. So again, that's because domestic work is seen as women's work and women are still seen as lesser than men.
Yeah. So it's that sort of like internalized misogyny that
Exactly.
exists. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay. Work.
Yep.
Here are some places that we still see it. The example of party planning.
Mm-hmm.
So an unpaid thing. Hey, there's going to be donuts tomorrow, or there's a
Oh.
party for this. In the majority of workplaces, it's
Mhm.
people are just turning to a woman in the room
Mhm.
and asking her to do that.
Yes. Exactly.
What?
So, yes, I have
Go
I
ahead,
have
go
some
ahead.
thoughts on that, and I think it's interesting. I agree, but that's actually like my job is that I do
Well,
that.
but you're compensated for like that's
No,
your
correct.
job
But like
description.
I've always had that role
Okay.
outside of work in
Yeah.
friend groups. Like I've
Yeah.
always been that person.
Yeah, you bring the
Um,
things.
I bring the things. I'll bring
Yeah.
the floral arrangements. I'll like
Well, you
do
do
whatever.
really good floral arrangements.
Right. So,
side
but it's
note.
like I've had those thoughts of like, why, like I have almost sort of like been having internal battles because I'll have thoughts of like, well, yeah, this falls to me because I'm really good at it.
Uh-huh.
But then I'm like, well, but why are you really good at it?
Yes, this is my thing
Like,
too.
So
Yes.
yeah, you are really good at it it's because you've been doing it for your whole life. Like, are you? Where's the natural talent? Like that would be like in the floral design.
Yes.
Like it's just something I like. It's creative. I'm just sort of good at it, right? But
Not
like
sort of, you're very good at it.
But like the thoughtfulness. Yes, I am a thoughtful person. But
Yep.
like, have I also been like taught by society that that's how like a woman shows up is by being thoughtful and by taking care of people and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So it's like this strange like nature versus nurture argument that happens here.
100%. We're going to talk about
Right.
mine too, but
Yeah.
I'm always the one who takes the initiative to plan something.
Yeah.
In everything that I do, in my family life, just everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say my husband is an exception to that because I have vocalized that sometimes I need someone else to do it.
Yeah.
And that's not something I vocalized anywhere else. And I think
Right.
about the same thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because yes, I am very good at that. That's a
Mhm.
skill I have. And I am the same thing you're saying. I'm caring and considerate,
Right.
and I will be the one to be like, oh, I haven't seen that person in a while. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be the one to plan it. I'm very good at executive functioning, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But where am I good at it because I've always just done it? Or am I good at
because
it
you've been trained by society to?
Yeah, and I do like doing it, but there are times where I'm like, I don't think any of these people would be my friends, not you, but any of these people would be my friends if I didn't reach out and set things up
If
with
you
them.
weren't holding up these relationships.
Yes,
right,
and
yeah.
I most of the time am comfortable with it, but I think to myself sometimes,
Right.
how much of this is like based on my self-worth? Like, why do I have to bring this to the table all the time?
Yes.
And it's that intuitive thing that we talk about with like, especially with like disordered eating and like, you know, being in touch with your body and trying to be comfortable in it, is that there isn't like a drawn line somewhere that you go like, okay, now I'm not happy about it.
Or this is safe and this is not safe.
Yeah,
right.
like I can plan and do the initiative 5 times, but if a 6th comes, I'm mad.
Then I'm mad.
That there's
you
no
don't know that
10-step program. It's not a formula.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's the old switch that flips, and you don't know it's going to happen until someone's flipped it.
And then it's about learning to communicate that.
Right.
And if you don't understand that it's invisible labor,
Right.
it's a lot harder. But
right.
so it's about learning to communicate to someone and saying like, hey, I'm like overdrawn.
Yeah.
Energetically.
Yes.
Could you plan this?
Yep.
Every time I have done that, the other person has been so happy to do it.
Yep.
So it's like, imagine if you just exploded it and we're mad. Like, but if you're not aware, you can't.
You're not going to. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think this is
people
important.
people end friendships and relationships over these uncommunicated thoughts and issues. You know. I have done that. I have ended friendships over things like that, like years ago.
Yeah.
Like, been like, why do I have to do everything? Why am I doing everything?
Yeah.
Why is this all on me?
I've
been like, okay, I'm just gonna wait and see if they call me back. And it's like, I've never heard from them again.
I've done the same thing.
Never.
But that's also not okay.
No, it's not.
There's
no, I'm not saying do it.
Yeah. No. What I'm saying is, it's also not okay to just let someone be the only one keeping a friendship going.
True.
Okay, so like I might plan stuff, but if like certain friends don't hear from me for a while, they'll still text or something.
Yes.
That's fine. That's acceptable to me. I have the rules that I have. You have the rules that you have. To be continuously in a friendship with me that you need to do. And none of it has to do with being the planner of anything.
Right.
Okay? But if you're not safe for me to say, like, can you plan this? I'm out. Then we're not going to be friends because every once in a while, I'm going to say that to you.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, what? You're going to be thrown off and you're going to get sweaty because I always do it. You don't know what to do. But like, not you. Not you. Personally.
Oh, Heather doesn't want to manage this. I'll do it. Sure.
Exactly. But I can communicate that to you.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? And you trust me to communicate it to you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Do.
But that's what my point is, like, in other relationships, I have to be comfortable enough to say that. Yes. And if you don't accept it well, we're not going to continue to be friends.
No.
There's a different level of like, oh, I expect this invisible labor from you, and I don't even check in to see how you're doing.
Yes.
Those are different.
I don't even care that you exist. That's how it reads. That's how it read to me with that friend. It was like, oh, you don't even realize like that I'm not here anymore.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because I was doing all the labor.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of a specific example. Okay. I'm going to move on from it. Okay. So party planning, sort of like we said, getting food, drink, etc. That this is in workplaces given to women.
Yep.
And in a lot of things that I was reading, there were women talking about this problem and how this is one of those things where it's such a quote unquote small slight. Yep. That a lot of women don't bring it up because they don't want to constantly be being like, this is unfair to do to women. You know, like that feeling that you're a broken record.
How do you even say no to something like that? Oh, I don't want to do this nice thing for this other person. Like the thing about all the misogyny that's layered in that. So that you can't say that.
100%. So like thinking about if you are maybe someone in a leadership role, making sure that you're equally assigning these jobs to men, even taking notes in a meeting, it's expected that the woman will do it. You know what I mean? So like, again, it's different if it's like your actual job is to come in and take the notes.
Yeah.
But this is when it's just an extra thing,
Mhm.
and this extra work is being assigned to women.
I just realized that at my job, my day job, my muggle job,
Yeah.
that I offered to like make flowers if someone gets married or something like that, to
Yeah.
bring flowers in. But then one of my coworkers was like, and I was like, oh, and I'll just get a card and we can sign it. And she was like, I'll get the card. I'll get the card. That'll be my job. I'll get the card. I'll have everyone sign it.
Yeah.
You do the flowers. And then we can bring them we can give them to the person. I was like, that's it. That's how you do it.
But that made you feel like your labor
Yeah.
was not invisible. That
Exactly.
little thing of her grabbing the card.
Exactly.
It like I said, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be even. That's not even jobs. Making a floral
No, right,
arrangement
yeah.
and getting a card.
Right.
That's what I mean. It doesn't have to be. It's the acknowledgement of
Right.
like, hey, let me do this part. I
Yeah,
see that
exactly.
you're doing that.
Right.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. And then I referenced this before, but one of the examples that was given in this is the Vogue article that I was talking about again, is women of color being asked to weigh in on, explain, and dissect racist interactions.
I was hoping you were going to bring this up.
Okay. This is invisible labor that is such, I mean, as a white woman, I'm going like, it's such a huge problem. I don't want to sound like tone deaf about it, but like, we're not realizing what we're asking all the time is my point.
No, I was literally just yesterday and the day before at a DEI conference. And yes, I mean, that was spoken about, that was addressed.
Oh, good.
About like the labor of people of color.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a specific session like about Indigenous people and like land back and all this stuff. It was wonderful. But even in those sessions, even at a DEIB conference, there were still white women there doing that.
It's so tone
and they
deaf.
Didn't realize they were doing it. And
it's frustrating.
It was so cringy, and I almost had to like pull a woman aside, but someone else got to her. But like, even with the best intentions, I mean, and I'm not making excuses, because it's literally in this day and age, it's unacceptable.
Agreed.
But to show like how layered it is and how like baked in it is to our society, that even women who are doing DEI work are still doing it and still not seeing it.
Well, there's this element,
and they're doing it to other women. Sorry, but it's so layered. Like it's like white people doing that to people of color, but it's like it's women doing it to other women. Like it's just so layered, and people just lose themselves in, or all they see is themselves actually. In those situations, and they're not thinking about what they're asking of other people.
There's a version of this that I feel like a lot of white women are very blind to. And I think I said this to you under Marco Polo, because I've been in these sort of environments too. And the whole thing is to sit and to learn. Right. Like if I'm the white woman in the room, my job is to listen. Okay. Right. Of course you can ask questions, but you have to be mindful. You have to do it at the right time. Like, I'm not saying like sit there and be quiet. I'm just saying like learn. Yes. Okay. So you're in this environment, you're hearing all this stuff. There's always a white woman there who takes the floor, and instead of making it about what it's about, makes it about them and tries to ask questions in this way that makes them sound like the most like coolest invited to the cookout white woman in the room. And it drives me bananas, because that is also invisible labor you're handing to the other women of color in the room.
Because you're taking away from whatever they're talking about or trying to educate people about, or whatever experience you're trying to share, and you're making it about yourself. You're taking the time away, you're taking the attention away, and you're making it about you, like trying to look like different. And you're actually proving that you're exactly the same. It's wild. It's wildly uncomfortable. It's so frustrating.
It's like this desperate need for the acceptance and for like the recognition that you've done a little bit of work. And it's really, it's ridiculous.
It's rough.
We need like a code word that we can yell out when another woman is doing this, so you can just, be like, shh.
It's shh. That's a code word. Shh.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. Okay. I want to talk about how this shows up in non-romantic relationships a little bit. Go into that, and then I have just some more additional points, but I think we should take a quick break.
Okay.
And we'll be right back.
We'll be right back after this short break. You know what goes great with podcast listening?
A great cup of coffee from a great coffee shop.
Yep, beans roasted in-house, amazing baristas. You know where I'm talking about.
Restoration Coffee. Can we go?
Yes, I need an Americano and maybe a panini too.
Ooh, I need blueberry maple latte and probably a resto bowl.
Ooh, yeah, check them out and visit restoration-coffee.com.
Let's talk about what we're obsessed with this week. All right, Heather. All right, this week I've been thinking about, and to your point, no, Heather, it's not a Debbie Downer dungeon. She was just asking me. I love alliteration.
Go in prepared.
No, it's not. It's
Okay.
the opposite, actually. I was thinking about how technology has I watch technology
Mhm.
and to see what my algorithm is showing me.
Yes.
And I noticed that there's been a shift in, remember, a couple of years ago, there was this type of stuff that was marketed to women like you and I, the sort of witchy woo-woo, whatever ladies. And
Yes.
it was like, we are the granddaughters of the witches you didn't burn.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
I do. 'Cause I know what you're going to say because I never liked that saying.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
But now what I'm seeing
Yeah.
and it's always a t-shirt, someone trying to sell a
Yeah.
shirt or a coffee mug or something, I don't know, whatever. But now it says something to the effect of they didn't burn witches, they burned women.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
It's like a
we
Turner
got there.
corn.
Oh, okay,
Corner
then we
turn,
got
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
It
Thank
makes me
goodness.
feel better. I get the allure of the first statement, right? I get that.
Totally. It in itself is a statement that's meant to be empowering.
Yes.
I get it.
But it's you're skipping over the fact of why were they burning witches? What are these witches you're talking about? It still held the mystique of that sort of creature or villain or character or archetype. You weren't talking about real people when you said that.
Yeah, it's the complete misrepresentation of what a witch is.
Right, exactly.
It's the patriarchy witch that you're still promoting.
It's like the Wizard of Oz witch. It's
Yes.
it's like an actual character costume witch.
Exactly.
And you weren't actually talking about that people were just murdering,
Yeah.
not burning, they were, but let's be real, they were
Torturously murdering
women
Yeah.
who wouldn't go along with the status quo of patriarchal religion.
Uh-huh.
That was the problem.
Or just that had something they wanted, really. But
Right.
yes.
Land, knowledge,
Yes.
not
Yes.
being married.
I think that's an important thing to talk about. I have
Yes.
seen that too, because again, I get marketed those kinds of things
Yes.
as well. And I always think I don't know that I would wear that on a shirt.
No, I wouldn't
Either version.
No, I wouldn't.
But
Correct.
Okay. But I do like the statement. I would probably have it on a coffee mug or something if someone got it for me. But the second statement,
I would just throw it into conversation.
the second statement I do like and appreciate because but there's almost another sentence I want to add.
What is it?
Which is that witches are still just women.
Yes, exactly.
It's just women who were experts in whatever they were doing.
Exactly.
It's knowledgeable women. That's it.
Yes.
That's all a witch ever
was.
Listen, my Halloween party theme this year is witches, and it's the
I
ones
love
with
witches.
the hats. And
I
all.
know.
It's the crazy version. I'm really trying to
True.
not sound like I'm on a high horse judgmentally. I love that
No,
shit.
that's my go-to Halloween costume as a witch. I love the energy of that.
100%. I'm not trying to be
It
Debbie
can't
Downer
be-
dungeon. No fun with the witches. But it's historically, and when you're
Right.
trying to be an empowered woman about it, can we finally get to just be honest about what this really is and take out that thing that we don't like in this industry of it's so woohoo and magical and other.
Yeah, it doesn't actually exist. Right.
Yeah.
It has to be more than just the green skin and the pointy nose and all that stuff. It can be that.
Yeah.
but it has to be more of that. It has to be all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So
I think that's a
I'm
great
glad to
point.
see that progress. Even,
Yay.
I mean, it's just marketing stuff.
I mean,
but
we
like,
need some little
it's
wins.
interesting. Yeah, that actually feels like a win. I was like, oh, we're not saying that anymore. That's cool.
I agree.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sorry if you have that on a shirt and I just sounded judgy, but like, I do like the sentiment.
I do too.
The second one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care.
Oh no, yeah, no. The second one, it makes me feel like progress is happening a little bit, at least.
Yay for progress.
Yeah.
All right, Jay, let's talk about invisible labor in relationships that are not romantical relationships.
Okay.
Okay. First off, I have to say that out in the world, I find that women are much more likely to acknowledge invisible labor than men are.
Yes.
And again, I think that's because they do it more.
Right.
But I also still see men floundering in trying to figure out how to do that.
Yes.
Like, remember that thing we talked about 100 million episodes ago? I think it was in an Obsessed, where it was like a TikTok or it was a post on Instagram or something that was like, name something you like about women that has nothing to do with their appearance or whatever.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
I vaguely remember that.
One of the things that was said was like, men like how women are always like complimenting each other. And like,
yes,
all these men feeling like they wish they could compliment other men.
Yes.
But like it would be weird, like society doesn't let them. That's crazy, by the way.
No, but it's valid. I mean, it's
like it's
absolutely it's
that we would be like, hey men, it's going to be weird if you compliment each other.
Don't be kind at all, even to your friends.
No.
Yeah. No.
Don't be like, oh, I like that sweatshirt you got, bro. Like, where'd you get it? Like, you can't say that. That doesn't make any sense.
No, and I mean, and listen, you and I could talk about this for 1,000 years. And I mean, do I need to make this into a political commentary? Probably. We probably should all be having these conversations. But like, that's why we are where we are politically now. It's like, that's why MAGA is a thing. That's why it's, not only is it a thing, but it's so extreme and radicalized as it is now. It's because of that sentiment that men can't even accept or give a kindness to each other because of the patriarchy. Yeah. That now we have this like full-blown epidemic of MAGA.
Yeah. 100%. As a person who attempts to compliment something, I try as hard as I can to always make it a choice. Like not just like, I was going to say great body to a lady.
Hot body. Looking so hot.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like I try not, like sometimes I'll say something like, oh, your hair looks really great today.
Yeah.
But I mean it and it does. But like I try to not have it only be like the genetics.
Oh, something aesthetic. Yes. Right.
You know, like I love that top because you picked it out.
Chose it.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like
right.
I'm trying
your
to be
style.
Of that. Yeah.
Yes.
But I am somebody who tries to do that a lot.
Yes.
That's a thing I do.
Same.
And it's, both of us are authentic. I don't lie. I don't give you,
oh no.
I wouldn't say I like something if I didn't like it, but I do try to find something.
No. My daughter does 3 of those a day.
That's awesome.
She's done that since she was a child.
Okay.
Like she like gives 3 compliments a day.
I love that.
And I am trying to use that as a model.
I love that.
I usually get like 1 a day, but it's like, it can be scary.
Yeah.
For like an introverted weirdo to be like, hey, I like your bracelet. That's how I feel on the inside when I'm doing it.
But I think also it's like, what does it feel like to receive a compliment?
Exactly.
It's
That's
like
how I get over it.
Nice.
Correct.
Exactly. So yeah. So as that person, and also there is a thing about me, Jamie, that there's this like, it's like a dichotomy or like a pendulum thing where like I make people really uncomfortable. I'm gonna speak about men to start. Okay. So people in general, but I'm referring to men. At first, uncomfortable words like intimidating, or I thought you were like, you know, mad at me because you don't smile all the time. I don't know. I get that at first.
Yeah, same.
And then it swings to, you're the woman I'm going to ask all the questions to because it's you created a safe environment for me to ask, and also you'll call me an asshole, but like you'll teach me.
Yeah. Right.
I also know that you're that person.
Yep.
Okay. It's weird, right? I think we both have that swing of like,
yes, she
scares the shit out of me.
Yes. I thought you hated me.
And then 1 second later it's like, I'm going to come to you with all my problems and ask you everything. Okay.
Correct.
So as the 2 patron saints of that,
yep,
I we do get asked by a lot of men different questions like, how would I do this? Or why is this happening? Or what's going on?
Right.
Okay. So in this, I find it really interesting because men are very uncomfortable trying to express to the women in their lives that they appreciate their invisible labor.
Yes.
Like and I don't mean uncomfortable like they don't want to do it. I mean like they don't know how to do it.
Right.
And then they make it like very oddly logical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like there's this thing where they're like, but I work these hours.
Yeah.
Or, but I'm always like, get the butt out.
Oh, they're trying to like rebalance it.
Yes. And what my advice always is like, speak to the emotion.
Yes.
I mean, if I could just give advice to men for a minute on any topic that you're asking about, it's that. But just think like, oh, that's how you're feeling. Validate the feeling. I'm sorry that you feel that way. What can I do to not make you feel that way? It's not you saying, I suck and I'm not doing my share of the work.
Well, but this is what happens when we don't teach people, men in particular, emotional intelligence.
And this is why this issue is so complicated, because it isn't just a matter of going like, I'm not doing invisible labor anywhere anymore. Like
exactly.
It's so deeply rooted in our culture that like it takes so many layers to
because they have to unlearn that.
Exactly.
You have to if we're speaking about men and women, we have to unlearn. Men have to unlearn how to take all of that.
Yes.
And women have to unlearn how to give all of that.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily safe to do either of those things.
It's really just about, in any relationship, friendship, work relationships, your family, romantic relationships, with your children, family dynamics. Yeah, like in all of those, it is about communicating it.
Correct.
Okay. Now, if you have a person who will not give any consideration to your emotional well-being, and is not open to any conversation about it, then that's not what I'm referring to. You don't owe that person nothing.
Correct.
Absolutely put those boundaries up.
100%.
What I'm meaning and what I think our point is that this is a lot of effort to communicate in all of these different ways, because you're also gonna like suddenly see stuff that you didn't realize. Like
exactly.
It's going to keep showing up, and it's just about learning to communicate and feeling safe, communicating your feelings to people.
Yes. And I think a really interesting point I had earlier, and you just reminded me of it, is that if you're doing any kind of boundary work, which we have episodes on that, if you're feeling like you're not being respected in relationships, if you're not aware of invisible labor, you might not know where to put boundaries up.
Yeah.
Or you might put a boundary up and then you can't hold it up.
That's what I was just going to say. Or you might not understand why it doesn't feel right still.
Right. Or why you can't even enforce it.
Yes.
Is because you're so used to giving and doing all of this work that work extends beyond your boundary.
Exactly.
So and again, that's why boundaries aren't for other people. They're for you, which is also another hard lesson to learn.
Oh God. Yeah.
Is that a boundary isn't really for other people. It's for you and what you're giving to other people and how much gets out to other people. So like if you don't know where your invisible labor is and you're saying, oh, this is my boundary, here it is, it's right here, you can't have more than that, but all the invisible labor you do extends like a mile beyond that boundary, then you can't respect it. You can't respect that boundary.
Yes. And just to add to that, the problem, well, there's a bunch of problems there, but one that I think people miss is that when you don't see that and you have these relationships with people and you can't understand why you can't feel closer or you don't feel respected or you don't feel seen. And it's because you don't know how to communicate that you are feeling frustrated, like
disrespected,
with the invisible
taken
labor.
Advantage of.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's just like, it's so interesting to me that like this conversation goes into so many different, like we think of it again, just in like a heterosexual marriage. Like,
right. It was everywhere. I see it, like you said, families, and obviously we spoke about like marriages and things like that. But like when you think about like extended families, like I see that a lot in like families with like adult siblings where there's one sibling that's expected to do all the planning or all the gift giving or all of the things. And
it's the oldest daughter.
It is the oldest daughter. Sure is. But like it's everywhere.
Yes.
It's everywhere. And if you don't know, and if you've just grown up in a family like, oh, I'm 40 years old and this is how we do things, like it's really hard to change. Like give yourself some grace. It's hard to change things like that.
It is. And listen, it's not gonna, as somebody who would love to control other people all the time.
Right.
Anything that needs controlling, I would
You're got it.
volunteer.
Right.
Like I would love to. You actually can't
No.
really control other people.
Right.
Right. So you can't just like go into that relationship, family or otherwise, and just go, it's going to be 50-50 on the gift giving
Right.
now. Like, because like you said, neurodiversity, like,
Right.
but like, what are you doing? Because I'm doing all this. What are you
What
doing?
are you doing?
Yes.
Right.
That's what you can go in and maybe in a nicer way
Yes.
say. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And to your point about communication, like I remember when I was working on boundaries and learning about like invisible labor, it's like I always had this thought of like, well, who's going to do it then? If I don't do it, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
If I don't get these gifts, they're not going to be purchased.
How about the thought it's not going to be done as well if I
That
don't do
also.
it? All of these things play in.
But those are conversations that you should be having.
Yes.
But if you don't know, like, if you don't know any of this, you don't have this language, you don't understand the context of what's happening, it's really hard to have conversations like that.
Absolutely. I 100%.
It's a really good starting place.
I agree. I mentioned this before, but the whole like, what can I bring? Once I like started to be really aware of that being only women, I started to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And it really blew my mind. It went across generation. Like I couldn't find one that it wasn't applying to as much.
Right.
And again, it's not necessarily a problem. I'm always going to be the person in my romantic relationship. If my husband and I are invited somewhere for dinner, I am going to be the one that asks, what can we bring? Even if my husband was the one that was invited.
Yes.
Well, I'm sending the text, what can I bring?
Or I'm the one saying, ask them, what do we bring?
Yeah. And then most likely getting it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's always going to be the case.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying women stop that.
No.
But if you acknowledge that for both of you to go to this dinner party, you've done a lot more work than the other person who just showed up 2 seconds after they got home from work, they changed their clothes and they got in the car, and you have gotten a gift and you have found out, you've reached out, you found out what to bring or to make, and you've done that and you've gone to the store.
You got a babysitter and
maybe you even orchestrated like, go pick this up on your way home. You still did all of that labor.
The logistics.
Yes. So when you're going there and you can't figure out why you're irritated with your husband, that's because you're not paying attention to the invisible labor.
Right.
So it's about acknowledging it first,
right,
and giving yourself credit, and then looking to see like, should there be a rebalance here? Yeah. Okay. So within friendships, I mentioned this before, but I wanted to say more about this because, to your point before, there's also an element of worth tied in.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you a thing that I figured out, the thing that I hinted at before, but I don't want to spoil it just yet.
Okay.
But when I read this, it sent me into a rabbit hole of my own behavior.
Okay.
And I really think about, and again, I'm not talking about, I feel like I have to keep saying, I'm not talking about you in a friendship, but the thing about Jamie and I that we do really well as friends is communicate with each other.
Yes.
Like I trust you to tell me if I piss you off or do something, or you need something from me, and vice versa, I think. So this doesn't necessarily apply here, but in most other relationships that I have, I am always the manager of everything. Yeah. And it is expected.
Well, you do a lot of management in our friendship. Like
yes, but it's
credit is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. But it's also my personality and my design, because I would prefer the control. I'm going to be thinking about it deeply, whatever it is, way more and longer than you are. Not just you, I just mean everybody.
Right. No. And I also know both of us well enough to know that like, oh, I'm not going to offer because I know Heather would prefer this. Where with another friend, I might be like, oh, I don't want them to think I'm not caring or doing the work. But I'm like, oh no, Heather's got this. She wants to do this.
And that's my point, because that's what happens due to design.
Correct.
Due to my personality, who I am, what I'm good at, and what I quote unquote bring to the table. That occurs all the time.
And how you've been socialized.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And so I think about that, and I think about why does sometimes in some relationships do I suddenly become annoyed about it?
Mm.
Like, why does that happen? Because I fully am aware that it is me creating that dynamic.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And me holding it up and not going to other people like, hey, could you actually do this?
Right.
Because anytime I do, people are happy to. Right. Yeah. So my point is like, where does it cross? Like, why am I letting it get to that? What's going on? And I think to myself, because I create that all the time. Right. I create that dynamic. I'm good at that stuff. Like, it makes sense. And I realized that I think some of it, are you ready? Comes as an apology for the fact that I'm so much to deal with. I really, if I'm being honest. Okay. In relationships, I think I'll manage all of this because you have to put up with me. Because you have to
deal with me. Dun, dun, dun.
So.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I get it.
Is it at the forefront
I don't like
of
that for you.
No, I don't either. Is it at the forefront of my thoughts?
No.
Is it driving everything I do?
You're not like, oh, everyone hates me. I want to do this. Oh, no.
I mean, maybe if it's like PMSy time, I feel that way. But yeah, right. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, I do.
I'm not actively walking around feeling that.
Yes.
However,
subconsciously,
somewhere deep in there is some vow or belief that, hey, I'm already good at this. Let me do the majority of the heavy lifting here as a way to be like, I'll make up for the fact that like I talk too much and I go on rants and I'm loud or whatever the other stories I have about myself are. So my point of this is not to make everyone feel bad for me or cringe or to make you make that face at me where I know you're going to give me a speech about it. But to say that you can also look for this stuff when you're looking at invisible labor because you're never going to get, again, it doesn't need to be fully balanced or fully healed, but you're never going to get through to a good place if you're not looking at why you're holding on to it. Yeah. Like you need to know those things. And I believe that everybody has one of those things for whatever thing you do the most of, whatever your main invisible labor is. That is a thing that you have that you feel like you need to do because you're too much or not enough. So I'm just inviting everyone to look at that.
This is interesting. Well, I appreciate that. I think that's valid. I mean,
I know that I do it.
Yeah, no, I don't like it, but I like it.
It's subtle, but it's definitely underneath everything else. Yeah, it's a motivator. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry, you have to put up with me. I'm too much. So let me do all the planning in our relationship.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
Okay.
But I would also like to say, you brought this up before.
Yes.
Where in our friendship, I am the planner. I am the one who says, let's do this thing on this day at this time. For the majority. You do it too, but for the majority.
You do it.
But the thing is, it doesn't bother me because you do a lot of other things. So the thing is, like, if you're looking at your friendship and if I was like, Jamie, you got to plan 50% of this stuff or this friendship's not going to work. You're missing it. Yes. Because like, what are you bringing? Right. Like, these are these other things that you do. Like, so I think it's just important to acknowledge. It's about going like, yeah, you know, in my friendship this, or in my relationship with my husband this, but like, what did they do? It doesn't have to be equal in each category.
No, exactly.
And that's why the invisible labor of planning something when I'm with you bothers me zero amounts. Right. Because it's an equal friendship. It isn't one person doing all the work.
Yeah. And you have to look at where people's strengths and weaknesses are. I mean, I know we've said it, but in my marriage, we didn't choose that my husband was going to do the majority of the cooking because that's fair. It's because he's better at cooking.
Yeah, he enjoys cooking.
He enjoys
You don't
cooking.
like to cook.
I do not like
unless
it.
It's carrots.
I love carrots.
I know.
It is carrot season. Carrot season is upon us. But like it's not, it can't be 50-50.
100%.
It's not like I get 50% of the meals and he does. It's like, no, he does the majority because he's better at it. Yes. I do the majority of like the driving and the commuting because I like being in the car and listening to audiobooks and he hates it.
Yes.
He hates being in traffic. He hates driving in Boston. So we split it to where like the strengths are and to what makes more sense. It's not like a split division of labor.
And that's why it's about intuition, knowing how you feel, and communication.
Correct.
To balance out
Right.
the invisible labor,
Right.
not splitting everything
Right.
50-50, because that's, I mean, honestly,
It's not realistic, first of all.
in what, outside of like your marriage and our friendship,
Right.
what things do you do that everyone, it's 50-50 and not like 80-20?
Oh,
0. Okay. This is just a personality type. We just move aside. We're going to do all of it. It's just what happens.
there's
Don't
definitely a
expect
subconscious vow there also somewhere.
What do you mean? Amazing.
It's not because we're great people.
No,
It's because we're too much or too little. or something.
exactly. We are trying to make up for something, everybody, okay? Okay. So, a few points that I thought were really interesting. As more women entered the workplace, the amount of invisible labor they did increased.
Of course
instead
it
of
fucking did.
decreased.
Of course it did.
Now, here's the fact that I didn't like. Well,
Mm.
it's not that I didn't like it. It's that I was like, this can't be right.
Mm.
I get it now, but here it is. Breadwinner women
Yeah.
in heterosexual relationships do more invisible labor than women who don't earn money outside the home.
Okay.
Do you see
Yeah.
how, so you're in a heterosexual relationship and you're the breadwinner. Either you both work and you make
Yeah.
more money, or you work and your husband stays home.
Yeah.
Okay. You do more invisible labor than, this is not very nicely worded, like a woman who doesn't earn money outside the home,
Correct.
considered
Right.
a stay-at-home mom.
mom. Yes.
They do more invisible labor.
Yeah, because they're probably doing it at work, and then they're doing more managing of those shifted tasks.
So I thought that too.
Mhm.
That's not even
No, what is it?
it. The psychology is that the women who are the breadwinners, who are outside of the house, have more successful jobs that we could sort of, in a perfect world, say probably have higher expectations on them.
Mhm.
They give a lot more to. I
Right.
know that's not
Yeah.
a perfect
No, but
society,
yeah.
but okay. Feel more guilty about the fact that they aren't home. So to make up for it, it's a
They do
self-worth
more.
problem. They do more.
Yep.
I
can
did
see
not
that.
want that to be true, but it is.
Yeah, no, I can see that. That
Isn't that
tracks.
crazy?
No, that makes perfect sense. Actually, it's awful.
It makes perfect sense in
Yeah,
this terrible
it's
dystopian
awful.
society,
Yeah,
but it's
100%.
it's sad.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make it sound like women who don't earn as much don't do any labor. But the point to this,
No.
I don't want to
No,
sound like
no.
I just think rich women have it harder than poor women. That's ridiculous.
No.
But I want to make the point that this is a huge self-worth problem,
Yes.
because we're raised to think our value is in doing that.
yes, and
I
you're
mean,
also.
there's still childless cat lady comments. Like,
Ugh.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, your
Yes.
worth is in having children. Like,
Yeah.
this is where we're stuck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And living in a patriarchy, things, anything is always going to be a problem for a woman, whether she's working, whether she's not, whether she's rich, whether she's poor. Like,
Yeah.
there's always going to be
Mm-hmm.
a system set up against her.
Exactly.
Not that the patriarchy doesn't affect men also, it does.
Definitely does. Yeah.
But it's set up to benefit men. And so the women are always going to be scrapping to keep up.
And if you want to make that effective,
Mhm.
especially in an age where there's more information available to
Right.
women, you harp on the conditioning that your value
Correct.
is in domestic labor,
Right.
serving a man and raising children.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, if you do those things and you feel good about yourself doing them, that's great.
Yes.
There's nothing.
If it's your choice, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. So I wanted to bring up the term emotional labor.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to just define that as its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the need to induce or suppress feelings in order to sustain the outward countenance that produces the proper state of mind in others. For example, to put your feelings to one side in order to manage other people's emotions.
Never heard of it.
I was going to say, if you looked this up somewhere, I'm pretty sure there would be just a picture of you. Being like, if you'd like to know what that looks like, please follow Jamie Hayhurst around for a few days.
Yes.
But actually you wouldn't even see it because you're too good at it that people don't
No, they don't.
know. And you're working on this
I am.
really hard. I don't want to
Yeah,
just
me and my
tease you.
therapist are. Yeah.
I don't mean to just tease you
No,
about it.
it's accurate.
But this is important to realize because, again, I think a lot of women do this.
It's like it's just a different form of invisible labor.
Yeah, but They don't even think of it as
No.
anything outside of just existing.
No. Yes, exactly. I think women are socialized to put their needs aside, whether that's not working and staying at home, or whether that's thinking about everyone else instead of themselves, or if it's this, like literally taking your emotions and putting them aside.
Yeah.
So that they can manage their own environments. I mean, that's what women are socialized to do, that to stay safe.
Exactly. I also saw an article that talked about how conditions like PTSD and CPTSD, women with those conditions tend to do more emotional labor like this to avoid their own feelings, and they don't realize they're doing it because it's a coping mechanism.
Correct.
So like,
yes,
again, it isn't just, oh, I see it, I'll stop doing it.
Correct.
As you know,
No,
right? It's
correct.
a lot of work to make these adjustments.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can confirm.
One thing that I got really excited when I found this fact, because I will now be using it all the time when this gets brought up to me, when people talk about invisible labor, I'm getting worked up about it because
I was going to say, what's this third eye is
shooting off?
Yeah.
I'm trying to control myself. I'm trying to stay calm about it because it really has always irritated me, where there's this thing where when a man and a woman, so a heterosexual relationship again, I just want to keep acknowledging it because I don't want to make it sound like it's the same in every relationship. Correct. Okay. So the woman has a baby and is expected to do the majority of the taking care of the baby because she has like her brain changes and she has the hormones. So like she should wake up all the time.
Right.
Okay. This is something that people really don't like to let go of.
No.
Okay. So I found it. Okay. I confirmed it in 3 different places, 2 of which were real books, not just articles online. Okay. So yes, women's amygdalas do become larger when they become a mother automatically.
Yeah.
Okay. But men's do as well as soon as they acknowledge that they are a primary caretaker.
Interesting.
Okay.
So the same thing happens.
Same exact thing.
Love that for them.
So don't give me that.
Yeah.
Do not give me that.
No.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely.
But I mean, when you talk about like worth being tied into things, I mean, women are taught that like if they're not doing all of that,
they're
like the parenting, all of that stuff, if they're not doing all the feedings and the changings and all that stuff, that they're not a good mother or not as good of a mother or whatever.
If you can't handle it, baby, what's wrong with you?
That's a lot of programming to overcome, to let that go.
Just so you know, in case you're a new mom listening, nobody can handle that. None of us can. It's a pretend act if you're handling it.
No, and women used to be able to handle it better because they had entire communities around them that helped them. They had literal communities around them. When you think about like whoever your pagan ancestors were, wherever they lived across the globe, women were supported with communities of generally other women, but men were part of that system, that ecosystem that supported women when they had a baby. It wasn't just like you sitting alone in a rocking chair in the middle of the night crying.
I mean, you didn't even have the baby
experience
by yourself.
No.
Like every woman around came to help.
Exactly.
It's just so different now.
So so if you're feeling like, why can't I do this? The people that came before me did it. It's because they did it with a community around them.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. One point that I think is interesting, that I think is one of the many reasons why the patriarchy does not like same-sex marriage.
There's a lot of reasons.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons that are just plain stupid.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. But I think same-sex marriages make the argument for women's work just a tough one.
Exactly.
How you
exactly how can you rationalize that this is what women should be doing?
It kind of breaks down the system for everybody.
Exactly.
So
it shatters the mirror of that.
Exactly. Another thing that I thought was interesting when I was reading about how this is affected in the workplace.
But that's all. I just want to say that's also another layer of where like the queer community does a lot of invisible labor for straight people.
That's a great point.
Right. So like they're breaking down those stereotypes.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work.
I mean, people still will say to like two men in a relationship, like, which one's the girl?
Ugh,
like, how do we not understand this yet?
right. But that's more invisible labor upon invisible labor.
Exactly.
Right.
That's an excellent point. So in the workplace with invisible labor, another thing that I thought was interesting is that women still do the majority of relationship building and conflict resolution in the workplace. I mean, outside of the workplace too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's all these interesting like opinion pieces from women who say like, this is how we win.
Okay.
Because this is so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, that sort of work is still not really, the people who do that kind of work are not paid as much. Like, it's not as valued. But like continuing to force the value of that, and in a society where the ability to communicate with each other is vital. Yeah. It's not just going to an office anymore. It's, you know, you have to email people, like you have to deal with people in a much bigger way. Right. That women being centralized in this is really important, and the patriarchy hates it.
Yeah, I bet they do. Yeah, no, we're good at that.
All right. And so I just want to end by saying one more time.
Okay.
That this is not about making everything even.
Right.
This is about intuitively knowing how you feel, understanding what invisible labor is and where you do it and how it's affecting your nervous system, either. Correct. Even never mind your relationships. Right. And then making sure you have the tools to communicate or work on feeling comfortable communicating when the load of invisible labor starts to feel too heavy.
Yeah. And like,
or just heavy.
Yes, exactly. Say it before it's too heavy.
Yes, please. Yes,
yeah. But like we always say with intuition, everything about intuitive work is about balance.
Yes.
Right? So like this is more of that. Like you're not looking for that straight down division 50-50. You're looking for balance. Where's the balance in this relationship?
Yes.
It might be, you know, the scales aren't going to be perfectly aligned. But where's it feel like a good balance for you?
Yeah, where do you feel good?
Right.
That's intuition. The balance.
That's
and
intuition.
That's only can be formed intuitively and only in the present. Because where you felt good last week, you might not feel good the next week. Like it can change in a minute. It can change in an hour. You could have listened to this episode and be like, I gotta rearrange some shit. Yep. Okay. But there's also vows and layers and things in yourself not allowing you, you know, like we were talking about in the beginning, those white women making it about them in those meetings or asking questions and dumping this invisible labor on these other women, like they are doing it because they're not aware.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, again, I'm not trying to make excuses. No. But it's about being intuitive enough to look at your stuff. Right. And to understand yourself. And to even just know about yourself. Like, oh, I tend to seek approval of you know, people in these roles in marginalized communities. So
or people in authority figures.
Yes. Yeah. So what am I doing that could be creating invisible labor because of that?
Exactly.
It's not just about how it's happening to you. It's like, how are you handing it out?
Yes.
What might you be missing?
Right.
And to just try to, again, when you're like, we talked about the complimenting, but also try to just tell people that you appreciate the certain things about them.
Agreed.
Like I appreciate about you that a couple days can't go by without you checking on me. I really do appreciate that because that's not super common. Oh. Even if you had nothing to say, you would say hi to me.
Of course.
Every day. I know. But the thing is, like, I appreciate that about you. And you might not even know that that's a thing that I appreciate. Yes. Right? So it's like, make sure you say that, because then just telling it to the other person, then they know, like, oh, so if you just did a lot of planning, I'll just go like, how you doing today? And that makes you feel like the load just lifted off of you. Like, that's just like a weird example. I don't mean that, but like, that's the kind of thing you need to know and see. So understand what you appreciate, make sure you're saying that to people and understanding that like, that's part of them carrying the load too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been many times where I have seen someone say like, oh, I appreciate that you did that, but I need you to do this a little bit differently. And the person took it so much better.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. So communication's key.
Exactly. Yeah. Communication, knowing your shit.
Boundaries,
and understanding what invisible labor is. Done. All right. I need the visible labor of drinking coffee. Let's go get some.
Hey everyone, Heather and I have an ask for you. If you love this episode or if you love the IGG, can you do us a favor? We need you to go onto whatever platform you listen on and download, subscribe, like, love, whatever it's asking you to do. Can you go do those things for us on the platforms that you listen on? It would mean so much to us.
Thanks for listening to our episode. For a way to get in touch with us, please visit our website, intuitivegirlsguide.com. We love hearing your feedback on our episodes.